Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and, of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi. With me is Armin Navabi. Armin Navabi, just say hello really, really quickly. I know you don't like small talk.
Hello.
That's it. That's all you need. So, welcome again. We're recording this this near the end of February, so we usually have a monthly public live stream where we get everybody wants to come in, join in, ask questions, and we usually use a topic that everybody's interested in, that most people are interested in, and we discuss it. And this week, that topic is going to be, or this month, is going to be Sunni versus Shia. So we're going to talk about these two sects. I mean, we've all heard about them, that Islam is divided into Shiaism and Sunnism. There are Shias and Sunnis. They're always fighting each other. They've been fighting each other for a very long time. Right. Why are they fighting each other? How did they arise initially? What is their history? What are the differences between what they believe? And what are the issues and the friction that they have with each other? So we're going to cover that and a lot more here.
Right.
And in addition to that, we will be taking a lot of your questions. Just quickly before we move on, the website is secularjihadist.com. If those of you who are new to this, if you like what you hear, please go check out the website. You can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/SJME. You can go there. You can sign up for as little as $1 a month, and that really helps.
We also now have Subscribestar.
And we have Subscribestar. So with that, you will get access to the videos, not only of these live streams, which are public, but also to our other episodes. And, previous guests have included everyone from Steven Pinker and Sam Harris to Mariam Namazi and Sarah Haider, Matt Dillahunty, you name it. It keeps going on and on. So, we've been doing this for quite a while, and we've got a lot of really, really interesting, good stuff for you guys to check out. So that's the obligatory stuff that I was going to say at the beginning. But now we're going to dive into the topic. Armin, do you have anything to say before we go on?
Well, no, I want to talk about what we're going to talk about, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the way I see this whole thing, because there's so many different things you could talk about when it comes to Shia versus Sunni, and usually it's all over the place, right? Some people talk about politics, some people talk about theology, some people talk about the story right after Muhammad's death, some people go a little bit earlier. But if you look at it, I think the best way, and you could tell me what you think about this, the best way to just organize the whole thing, right, is through a timeline. And this is the way I feel like it evolved, all right? And you might categorize it differently, but let me know what you think about it. I think the whole Shia-Sunni divide, before it was even seen as a Shia-Sunni divide, it started with a family drama, okay, before Muhammad's death. And again, please, people understand, when we say before Muhammad's death, I'm not saying these stories are real. We don't know how much of these stories are real. We are referring to these stories as they are canonized in Islam, based on Islamic mythology, right? Based on Islamic, according to Islamic teachings and according to hadiths. Hadiths are unreliable. All the biographies of Muhammad are unreliable, but we're just referring to these characters in Islamic stories, right? So it started with a family drama before Muhammad's death, alleged Muhammad's death. And then right after Muhammad's death, this family drama evolved into a political difference over who's the successor of Muhammad, who rules the Ummah meaning the Muslim community after that. And this difference between people supporting different people, supporting different successors, grew slowly, not initially, into a theological difference as well, right? So their stories, their narrative started to change, their idea about Islam, a lot of the core was the same, But even at the beginning, even the differences that we see now in theology wasn't there. The differences was just political differences. But then it evolved into theological differences. And these theological differences over many years, as they became stronger and stronger, give different people in these different camps different identities. So the theological differences turned into difference in identity as how you see yourself based on the camp that you belong to. And this difference in identity then translated into more political differences, right? And this political differences, because it was also a difference in identity and different tribes, now it had a less direct relation to theology, right? Because the original political differences was very direct to who's the successor of Muhammad. But then when it comes to theology and then identity and then more differences in politics, it's very hard sometimes to point to the political differences and draw a straight line between the politics and the theology, because there's a step in between, right? There's theological differences leading to differences in identity, and the differences in identity in different tribes leading to more political differences, which led into political difference, even modern political differences, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. And this is how I think everything works. There is an amalgamation. People try to separate things into neat categories of, there's a theological difference, there's a political difference, this is politics, this isn't part of the religion. But the thing is, it's an amalgamation of everything. All of the Abrahamic religions, much less Islam, much less Shias and Sunnis, is inherently political. Right, so these are, whether you're talking about the apocalypse, whether you're talking about behaving a certain way so you get to heaven and hell, whether you're talking about rules about how to govern society, all of those things, there is, if you roll the snowball.
Put it in a different category, is theological and political. But both the theology and the politics is Islamic, because Islam is a political religion. So I don't say religious and political, because the politics is part of religion. I say theological and political, right?
Yeah. So I think it'll be kind of interesting to start at the beginning,
right.
Start after the death, or actually even before the death of Muhammad,
yeah.
When the familial conflict began, and then how that became exploded essentially after he died. And then later on, even the fact is that as much as Shias and Sunnis tend to dislike each other and tend to fight each other and kill each other over all of these conflicts, their early spiritual leaders did work together. So that's also something that'll be kind of interesting to talk about.
Well, they also worked against each other as well.
They worked against each other, but they intermarried. We'll get to that in a little bit. Like, for instance, one of the interesting things is Jafra Sadiq, who is the source of the main, I guess you could call it, hadith of the traditions that the Shia follow. And this is one of the main differences between Shia and Sunni, is the sources of hadith, where they get their hadith, how to practice a religion. So Jafra Sadiq was not only a descendant of Ali, but also a descendant of Abu Bakr. And we'll get into that in a little bit. And also, he was also the teacher. At least two of the founders of the four main madhabs in Sunni Islam were students of Jafra Sadiq. So there were parallels afterwards as well. Ali, as the fourth caliph, actually worked very closely with the first two caliphs as well. Let's start. We are. So let's start from the beginning. We don't want to get too excited. What happens? I think this begins with
the necklace.
Yeah, with the necklace, but let's begin with Ali, who Ali was, right? Okay. Because the main conflict was between the Ali camp and the Sahaba camp, the Abu Bakr camp. So,
but the necklace, they didn't have an issue with each other before the necklace story.
They didn't, yeah. So that's how it started. But
right.
I just want to explain for people who don't know.
Okay.
So Muhammad was claimed to be the last prophet of Allah, right? Of God. He had a cousin named Ali, right? So Muhammad was essentially an orphan. He was orphaned very early. His mother died when he was just a little kid. His father died before he was born. So he was raised initially by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, until he was like around 10 or something. And then after that, he went to live with his uncle, Abu Talib. And his uncle, Abu Talib, was his legal guardian. And that legal guardian, it's like whatever legal meant at that time. Anyway, so his son was Ali. So Ali was, he was a young guy, and he was Muhammad's cousin. And Muhammad's best friend was named Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr was not related to him, but it was a very close friend of his. So Abu Bakr was the first man to accept Islam. Ali was also who came first? Was it Ali? Ali accepted Islam before Abu Bakr, but these were the two earliest.
Ali was the first. Ali was the if you don't count Muhammad, Ali was the first male Muslim. Khadija was the first Muslim.
Female, yeah. No, Muslim overall, human being.
Like if you don't count, actually. That's actually a little bit contradictory in Islam, because Muslims tell you Khadija was the first person that accepted Islam, but they also say Islam started since Adam. So I guess if you want to be technical about it, Khadija was the first person in the world that accepted the complete version of Islam, which is Muhammad's Islam.
Let's just say that the first one who actually believed Muhammad and believed that he was in his prophethood, and believed that the message that he had was divine. So Khadija was his first wife. Ali was the first male to accept it, Ali, his cousin. And then Abu Bakr followed pretty closely after that. So these were some of the earliest Muslims. And there was always they worked together. Ali was his cousin. Abu Bakr was his friend. Abu Bakr was also known as Abu Bakr Siddiq, because Siddiq in Arabic means friend. So he was a good friend of Muhammad's. What happened was that Abu Bakr had a daughter, right? And the daughter's name was Aisha. Muhammad, ended up. So
just to be clear, what you're saying, Ali, both it's going to be confusing because you're Ali and his Ali. Abu Bakr and the first companions of Muhammad are the most important people to Muslims after Muhammad, because they are the people that lived with Muhammad and know what he did and know what he said. And they lived according to his teaching. So the companions of Muhammad are seen as following every single word that they mentioned, even the ones that you don't like for example, Shias don't like Abu Bakr, but they are important. They are very significant because they lived with Muhammad. And these, among all the companions of Muhammad, these two figures are the most two important ones, Abu Bakr and Ali. Mm-hmm. But go on.
So the next phase happened is the next way these relationships were consolidated and further strengthened were through marriage on both sides. So Ali ended up getting married to Muhammad's daughter, Fatima, right? And Muhammad really had one surviving daughter towards the end who actually had kids afterwards. So his descendancy was carried out only through Fatima. So Muhammad's daughter's name is Fatima. Ali married Muhammad's daughter. Abu Bakr had a daughter named Aisha, and this is the famous or the infamous 6-year-old girl that Muhammad married. So Muhammad also married Abu Bakr's daughter. So this was the thing. So Ali got married to Muhammad's daughter. Muhammad got married to Abu Bakr's daughter, and
this was common. By the way, this was a very common way of uniting families and showing support for each other. You keep gifting each other's daughters to each other as a way to show union and support.
Right. And so it was, and there was a bit of a thing because technically Fatima was Ali's niece, right? Cousin niece, his cousin's daughter. And Abu Bakr, the difference between Abu Bakr's daughter was Aisha. Aisha was 6 years old at the time that Muhammad married her. And when she was 9 years old, the marriage was consummated. Muhammad was 53 at the time. So this is that controversial aspect of it where he actually married a 9-year-old. So
No, he married a 6-year-old. He
married a 6-year-old, consummated at 9. Yeah.
Raped a 9-year-old. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So then, so now we move on, and everybody's working together. Things are generally okay until Armin, the necklace incident.
Right. Okay. Well, before the necklace incidents, Aisha had to go take a dump. Okay, and this was while they were coming from a war campaign back home. On the way, and Aisha is this, and what are they called? And the things that they, I mean, she's the wife of the Prophet, so she's very important. She's not going to be walking, right? They're carrying her in this thing. What are they called? Like a carriage or something?
It's like a carriage where they hold it up on their shoulders, and then she's
okay.
sitting
And she's in one of those, and she's really tiny. Obviously, she's a child. So when they're arresting, she goes to respond to the call of nature, and she comes back. But then when she's back, she notices that her necklace is missing, and this is a necklace, her favorite necklace, because it was a gift from Muhammad. So she goes back to find it, but they get up and they leave, and they don't notice that she's not in it because she's so lightweight, right?
So this was a caravan that was traveling. So the caravan essentially left without her while she was going back to look for the necklace, and suddenly she was stranded alone. And she's back and like, what the fuck, everybody left without me. And this is a minor detail that I didn't know actually until recently. She could have actually, the caravan moves very slowly. She could have ran and caught up with them, but she was like, fuck that, I'm the wife of the Prophet. I'm going to sit. That's too granular. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. But let's stick to the major stuff. Okay. All right. So she sits there, and this other person behind the caravan, which was another person from the caravan, which was a bit behind on a camel, shows up, and he sees Aisha sitting in the middle of the desert alone, and he's like, what the fuck? Like, obviously he thought, like, I can't just leave the wife of the Prophet in the middle of the desert and just go, right? So he picks her up, he puts her on the camel, and they ride together, and they catch up with the caravan. But when they catch up, this looks really bad. People look at this strange guy, his hands around the wife of the Prophet, showing up, and people were like, what the fuck is going on? And rumors start spreading. Right. So the thing is that he was on a was it a horse or a camel? It was a camel. It was a camel. So he's on a camel. So obviously, if you're on a camel and you have a young girl sitting with you, she has to hold on to you. She's coming in. So, this young girl is like kind of holding on to him, except she's the wife of the Prophet. And at that time, this was very taboo. If you go to the Quran and you look up Surah 33, there are all these instructions to the wives of the Prophet. You know how they're supposed to wear a jilbab, they're supposed to cover themselves up. This was after. This was after. But the point is that the wives of the Prophet were essentially like, you don't go there, you don't look at them, you don't do anything. So and here she is, like, she's holding on to this guy who's apparently a very handsome guy, showing up on a camel, showing up at the caravan. And this is when Ali. No, wait. So don't get to. No, rumors spread. Muhammad is embarrassed. He stopped seeing Aisha for a very long time. And Aisha is crying all the time. Why is the Prophet not visiting me? What's happening? And rumors start, and Muhammad it was really bothering him that people are speaking about him on his back. So then what you were about to say happens, because then he brings his closest friends, his companions, together to talk about what to do, right? And Abu Bakr is there, and Abu Bakr is Aisha's father, but Ali is there, and Ali says that he started suspecting that there could have been an issue of adultery. No, I mean, he didn't say that. He said, like, just, this is embarrassing. You're the Prophet. You could have any girl you want. Just divorce her, right? Yeah, Ali said just divorce. No, I mean, he was saying that there is a suspicion of adultery. A lot of people are going to speculate. This is not good for you. It doesn't look good for your image, and you should divorce her. Divorce her. And Abu Bakr was like, hey, I'm in the room. I can hear you. You're talking about my daughter, right? And this comment by Ali was
the moment that Abu Bakr and his allies got divided from Ali and his allies, right, and his family, right? And Aisha and this is exactly why Aisha was always hated Ali after this, and this is why Aisha eventually, after Muhammad's death, actually started a war against Ali. By the way, Aisha was pretty badass after Muhammad died. Like, Aisha was like raised an army. She started going into battle. I mean, she was 18 when Muhammad died, and like she was kind of cruel and barbaric, but still, it was very interesting for an 18-year-old girl to be able to do all of that and start making such. Yeah, but go on.
Right. So, and then, so when that happened, right, there was. And so after this happened, Muhammad was actually, for a while, apparently conflicted, right? Because he was kind of caught between. He had Ali on one side, and Ali was telling him that, hey, you should divorce her. It's not good for PR.
Yeah,
and then on the other hand,
Ali underestimated how much Muhammad likes Aisha.
Right. And on the other hand, you had Abu Bakr, who was really upset. He's like, you're accusing my daughter of adultery, and she's the wife of the Prophet. So Muhammad's kind of caught between his best friend and his cousin Ali, both of whom are very, very dear to them. So it's basically like a family spat. But this was a root of the conflict between the Abu Bakr camp and the Ali camp. Right. And it basically started with Aisha, and then ultimately later on, Aisha and Ali were on opposite sides of a battlefield as well.
But a verse came down. This is the Quranic verse that came down that said, which is very convenient. In fact, there's Quranic verse came down that said that you need 4 witnesses if you make such allegations, right? If there's any allegations of adultery or zina or whatever, you need 4 witnesses, and basically it was Muhammad's excuse for saying, and if you make such an accusation, and if you don't have 4 witnesses, 4 male witnesses, by the way, then not only the accused should not be punished, the people that made the accusations should be punished, right? So this was Muhammad's way to shut everyone up, right? And Muhammad was like, every time Muhammad wanted something, he was like, I'm not saying it, God is saying it. Do you have a problem with God? Right, so, and Aisha, Aisha, I think she was pretty clever because she not only commented that she's surprised that there's a verse coming out specifically about her. When Muhammad died, she kind of used the same techniques because every time she wanted something political, she would be like, I remember Muhammad saying this. I remember Muhammad saying that. She used that technique so much that she became the second source of hadith, right? Because and people even pointed out, like some to her, that you're actually contradicting yourself in some of the things that you're remembering from Muhammad. I don't know. I don't remember how she responded to that, but this is why Aisha is the second most source of hadith, because she learned from Muhammad.
It's worth actually reading the Quranic verses that were quote unquote revealed after this incident, because of course Muhammad was conflicted. He's like, okay, I don't know, and then this verse came down, and it was basically a way to solve the conflict. Essentially it was a way to tell the Ali camp to just quiet down. I'm not going to divorce this girl. Right. So I'll just read it out. It's Surah 24.
Before you say that, actually the Rational Guard in the live chat also reminded me that there is actually a hadith of Aisha saying that the verses came at convenient times to Muhammad, right? So Aisha even noticed that. But go on.
So it's from 24:11 onwards. So Surah 24, verse 11 onwards. So here goes. Indeed, those who came with falsehood are a group among you. Do not think it bad for you. Rather, it is good for you. So he's speaking. This is God speaking to Muhammad. For every person among them is what punishment he has earned from the sin, and he who took upon himself the greater portion thereof, for him there is a great punishment. Why, when you heard it, did not the believing men and believing women think good of one another and say, this is an obvious falsehood? The falsehood being the accusation of adultery against Aisha. Why did they who slandered not produce for it 4 witnesses. As you said, Armin, this is when the 4 witnesses came thing that, if they were going to accuse her of adultery, they should have produced 4 witnesses. And when they do not produce the witnesses, then it is they in the sight of Allah who are the liars. So if you want to accuse somebody of adultery, you can't produce 4 witnesses, then you're the one who's a liar. It's on you.
Which is completely fucks with the way actually justice was supposed to work. Like, but this actually hurt a lot of women over the years. Like this again, a lot of people think Muhammad was this evil mastermind trying to fuck up the whole world. But if you look at if you believe in these stories, which I don't know how much of it is believable, it just seems like he came up with verses based on his own needs. The consequences of Islam later the negative consequence of Islam later was not like Muhammad trying to like fuck the world or anything, but this verse specifically fucked the world and fucked a lot of women trying to report rape. Like a lot of women in Islamic countries, when they go and report somebody raping them, and they don't have 4 witnesses, not only their case
they're accused of lying.
But they're accused actually of adultery after that.
Yeah.
Right? So they say, so you admitted to having sex with somebody, and you don't have 4 witnesses, 4 people that saw it. So not only we're not going to prosecute that guy for raping you, you are now going to be punished for actually committing adultery, and this is why it discouraged a lot of women from reporting rape. Right. Right. But go on.
So the verses go on, and now he's talking like Allah is pissed. He's pissed at the people who did the slander. So it says, if it had not been for the favor of Allah upon you and His mercy in the world and the hereafter, you would have been touched for that lie in which you were involved by great punishment. When you received it with your tongues and you said it with your mouths, that of which you had no knowledge, and thought it was insignificant, while it was in the sight of Allah tremendous. So that slander was massively, it really angered Allah. And why, when you heard it, did you not say, it is not for us to speak of this? Exalted are you, O Allah. This is a great slander. Allah warns you against returning to the likes of this conduct ever, if you should be believers. Like basically, just never lay off of Aisha, never ever accuse her of adultery. So this was. By the way,
apparently the hadith with regards to Aisha saying that the verses came down at useful times, that's not Sahih hadith. So just make. So thank you for pointing that out. So just. And again, when we say hadith or a hadith is authentic or not, we're not saying because they're authentic that they are true. Whereas when we're saying they're authentic, we're saying they're true according to Muslims, right? So it's canon in Islamic mythology, right? Not that we believe they're the way they say a hadith is authentic, because it's not scholarly at all the way they consider a hadith authentic.
Right.
But we need to point out if something is sahih or not, because we only want to point to things that is part of Islamic canon, right? But go on.
Right. Okay, so this happens. You have this thing, and now there's this tension between Abu Bakr and Ali. And later on, as Aisha grows up, between Aisha and Ali, that never properly gets resolved. So on the one hand, you have Muhammad's cousin and his blood relative, right, and his son-in-law. So the father of his only progeny. So Muhammad's descendancy only came down through his daughter. His daughter was the only one who had kids of her own, right? And Ali was the father of these kids.
Right.
So Ali was the father of Muhammad's grandkids. So on one hand, you have what the Shia revere as the Ahlul Bayt, which means that the people of the house, right? This is the house, the family of Muhammad. Yeah. And on the other hand, you have his wife, right? And there's a conflict between them. One of his 11 wives, his last wife. And the daughter of his best friend. So now you have this conflict, and eventually, when Aisha grows up and she's 18, Muhammad dies.
Right.
He's 62.
But before that happens, maybe we should talk about the last Hajj, where Muhammad takes Ali. This is the story that Shias keep referring to. Sunnis, Yeah,
Qadir?
The Sunnis don't really refer to the story that much unless they're trying to say why Shias are wrong. So this last story of the last Hajj that Muhammad went to. By the way, remember why people are like, why would Muhammad go to Hajj? Isn't he right next to the Kaaba? No. When Muhammad eventually conquered Mecca, he destroyed all the idols in Kaaba. He still went back to Medina or Yathrib. So to do Hajj every once in a while, he still had to travel from Medina to Mecca, right? And this was his last pilgrimage, his last Hajj. And a lot of people the reason why he did this was because he knew that he was going to die. So this was the most important message that he needed. This was the best opportunity for him because he had the largest audience. Everybody was there. All the people of all the houses were there, all the tribes and everything. And Shias point to say, this shows how important Ali is because he picked this moment. He knew he was dying, and he had the largest audience that he could have had because this was a Hajj. And this is what he decided to say to this audience. And what did he say to the audience?
He said, "Man kuntu mawla fahadha Ali mawla," which I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but it basically means, whoever. If you think that I'm your Lord, Ali is your Lord too. Like if you think that I'm your spiritual leader.
You said say that Arabic word again. You say Lord, but Sunnis translate that in another way. Say that again.
Friend. They say something like whoever's my friend. If I'm your friend, then Ali is your friend too. Right.
Right. So, but what's the word?
It's Mawla.
Mawla. All right. But the Shias translate that as to Lord, and Sunnis translate that like, no, he was just saying, if I'm your friend, Ali is your friend. But Shias think that's ridiculous because they say, why? Like, imagine if he stops the whole caravan. He stops the whole caravan and he tells all the people that are ahead to come back. And he says, let's wait for the people that are behind us to catch up. And everybody gets there. And Shia's like, do you think he did all of this at such an important time with such an audience to just tell everybody like, hey, if I'm your friend, he's also your friend? Obviously, they say that's a ridiculous translation. Obviously, Muhammad had something more important to say. Obviously, he was making it clear who's his successor is, and it was Ali and nobody else. I don't know what the Sunni refutation to that is. Do you know what the Sunni refutation is?
Yeah, I don't even know. Do they believe it? Is this something that they agree with at all? I just
heard so far Sunni say that he was saying that Ali is important, and Ali is important to us. Shia say, well, that Ali is our fourth Khalifa. So it's not like we don't value Ali. We just don't think like it's not... They say Shias think like the ruling is supposed to go through, it gets inherited through blood, and they say that's not how Islam is. That's how monarchies work, right? They say Sunnis' way of figuring out leadership is that after Muhammad's death, the whole community got together and they vote. It was more democratic. They voted for somebody and they selected their leader, which was Abu Bakr. And they say Shias think that leadership transfers through blood, but Sunnis' ways are more logical. Ali is important, and that's why he's the most fourth Khalifa. Shia's like, no, that's fucked up. Abu Bakr was not supposed to succeed Muhammad. It was Ali, and Muhammad made that very clear. And Shias point out that Sunnis actually don't have any... They say that their way is better, but if you look at all the first three Khalifas, they all got selected in three different ways, right? So they say, like, what are you guys talking about? The first guy was selected because you guys didn't even wait. So we should get to this, basically to the story, right? When Muhammad died, Ali was basically, burying Muhammad when they were having their meeting over their successor. Like, Ali was worried about the body and putting him to the ground, and they were meeting together saying who's the next successor. Like, you guys didn't even wait before. You made sure Ali is not there.
That's more the Shia version, too. I mean,
I know
that makes them sound really, really bad.
Right.
So the thing is, again, a lot of this is around the controversy around the word mullah. That Sunnis think it's sufficiently vague to justify their view of Ali. So, for example, if mullah means leader, or then Muhammad saying, whoever's leader I am, Ali's your leader too. So that isn't, for Shias, that's a clear declaration of successorship, right? So they think that they celebrate this. It's the Islamic month, Dhul Hajj. It's the 18th of Dhul Hajj when they celebrate what they call Eid al-Qadir, which means, this is the day that, a celebratory day of the day that Muhammad appointed his successor, and he named Ali as a successor. The Sunni view is because mullah can have so many different definitions. It can mean partner, it can mean ally, and we're totally down with that. Yes, of course, Ali was an ally. If if I'm your ally, then Ali is your ally too, right? And of course, we have him as our fourth caliph. We revere him, so it totally works with him. So there isn't really any way to resolve this. But after he died, yes, there was a meeting, right? And depends on whose account. What the Shias believe is what you said, Armin, is that Ali was more concerned about the body and the burial, and he was trying to take care of it, and he was like more in a grieving kind of state, while the others were out there and they were determining a successor and deciding who's going to come next. That obviously makes Ali look a lot better than the Sahaba, so that's why it's a Shia narrative. Whereas the other version of it is that everybody was there and everybody was talking about successorship, and they had an election and people legitimately voted for Abu Bakr over Ali, right? And this upset the followers of Ali, and this is where the term Shia comes from. Shia means follower. So the original term was Shiatul Ali, right, which means followers of Ali.
Just to be clear, at this time, there was no Shia, like even though Ali had his supporters and the other people have their own supporters, this was not categorized as a Shia-Sunni divide until many, many years later, right? This was just people that agree with Ali. And like the argument for Sunnis also was that Ali was too young at this point. And there was, and at that time, experience and age was valued a lot. So even if Ali was supposed to rule at some point, it wasn't his time yet. So that's an argument from Sunnis. And another argument from Shias is that they had the meeting without Ali. They made sure Ali was not present when they had that whole thing going on, right? To make sure that he doesn't get it.
That is a Shia view.
Another Shia view is that when Muhammad was dying, he asked for pen and paper. And this is why Aisha made sure that Muhammad was in her house when he was dying, so that Ali and Fatima and all these other people don't have access to him. Right? And when Muhammad asked for pen and paper to write something, they all were worried, because they were worried. Shia say that they were worried that he's going to say Ali is my successor or something like that. So they didn't give it to him. They were like, "You're too sick. Just relax," and everything. And also Muhammad, when he was dying, when he was at his deathbed, he also said that I'm very sorry for whoever the people that come after me. Like he was saying, people say that he was predicting a huge divide in the community. So he was. I don't know if that's Sahih or not, by the way. But go on.
Yeah. And the thing is to understand this from any point of. I mean, remember, when Muhammad started out, he started out as a rebel, a sort of a spiritual leader for people. This is when he was living in Mecca. By the time he got to Medina and after the Hijri, he had become a statesman. He'd become a warrior. And these words were synonyms. A lot of people are like, Muhammad was a warmonger. He was a warmonger. Well, most statesmen, if you've seen Game of Thrones, as recently as just several centuries ago, most statesmen were involved. I mean, they were just military people too. There was very, very little. There was a lot of overlap between the two roles. So yes, so he was a statesman at the time. There were security risks to the Muslim Ummah. So at that point, it was very, very important that there was a successor immediately. So for people to choose one in haste wasn't completely unheard of.
By the way,
because you didn't want to provide an opportunity of vulnerability when you're leaderless. right? Because that obviously gives your enemies an opportunity to attack.
I want to touch on that before you go to something. I just want to say that people in the live chat, if you want us to answer something, tag secular jihadists, and I'm copying and pasting the people that tag secular jihadists. I'm copying their questions in my notes. Okay, so just make sure you tag secular jihadists, and we will answer them at the end. Okay,
right. So now there's this rivalry. It's sort of like...
But I want to touch on what you said, because Muhammad had no sons. He had one son. He named him Ibrahim, but he died at a young age. And this is exactly the problem.
He had all of his... Whoever he had, I think he may have had more than one son, but they all died in infancy.
I thought he only had one son. Ibrahim was his only son that would die.
He's the son with a slave girl, with Maria the Copt. It was Ibrahim. He died at the age of 1.
Right. And there were other, this is exactly the problem. Other people that started empires had Alexander the Great. He had no sons, and that's why his empire got divided when he died. And Genghis Khan had the exact opposite problem. He had too many sons, and that's why his empire got divided after he died. But go on, Ali.
Yeah. So apparently, like I'm saying, I think that there were I know that Ibrahim was the son of the Maria, Maria, who was the Egyptian Coptic slave that he had. She wasn't his wife, but he also had, I think, a couple of other sons, but they all died in infancy. He had several children who all died in infancy.
If he had a son, he would probably be the successor.
Things would be very, very different. Right. So, but Sunnis believe that he had 4 daughters. Right, him and Khadija had 4 daughters.
Yeah, I didn't know this until I left Iran. By the way, I thought it was always just Fatima and nothing else.
Yeah, and then Shia believed that basically Fatima was the sole daughter. But the one thing that's true is that his progeny, his grandchildren, basically came from Fatima. So his descendancy was carried out from Fatima.
And this is why the Shias mention Ahlul Bayt a lot. I don't know if Sunnis, I don't think, mention it that much, because Ahlul Bayt, what Muhammad left, basically, Shias, what we are told in Iran is that he left the Quran and he left the Ahlul Bayt as a role model, right? For him to continue Islam. And Ahlul Bayt means people of the house, means his family. It means Ali, Hassan, Hussein, and Fatima, and the 12 Imams, right? After all the 12 Imams, right? But Sunnis are like, no, everybody is all Muslims are Ahlul Bayt, right? It's all Muslims, everybody together. We're all the family it's the Ummah. The Ummah is a whole family, right? And this is another reason, when Muhammad died, Fatima wanted to get the inheritance from Muhammad, right? Fatima, Muhammad's daughter, but she was denied because they said it belongs to the Ummah, it belongs to the entire Muslim community. And Fatima was like, this is my dad's, give me my dad's inheritance. And they denied her that, right? And this struggle between, so we have to just note the characters. This is like Game of Thrones. When you have too many characters, it might get confusing. So on one side, you have Ali and his wife Fatima, which is Muhammad's daughter. And they seemed very lonely compared to everyone else. Like everybody else that we consider main figures in Shia Islam, they're children right now, right? So it's basically them two, this couple versus the world, versus the Ummah. On the other side, you have these older, stronger people with more higher connections, Abu Bakr, Aisha, Omar, Osman. They have the wealth, they have the connections, and they now are in power. And they're on one other side. So, and this is why Shias always see their side as the oppressed side, as the lonely side, as the people, as the people that deserved a lot more, but were wronged all the time. They were denied their rights all the time. Not just Ali, but then Fatima, and then Hassan, and then Hussein, and all the 12 Imams. They were always denied their rights. But things get really out of hand when Ali is supposed to announce his Pledge of Allegiance to Abu Bakr, which is now the Khalifa. Yes. And he is now supposed to be like, I recognize him as the Khalifa, as the successor of Muhammad. And he doesn't. And Omar gets really, really angry. And he shows up at Ali's house demanding that he comes out and pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr, and he doesn't. And at some point, Omar, which will eventually become the second Khalifa, opens the door so.
This is, by the way, this is also the Shia version of this story.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So
but go
he
ahead.
opens the door so violently, and Fatima was behind the door, and he
also sets fire to the house, by the way.
Okay, but she's pregnant with Ali's third son. So the first two sons are Hassan and Hussein, and I think the third son was supposed to be named Mohsen, which was never born because of this. And he opens the door, and this is a moment where Shias really hate Omar for. Because this thing first kills Fatima's baby, but then she also dies herself a few days after, I think, right? Because of this, right? So Omar actually ends up killing Fatima, which is the most... For Sunnis, the most important female figure for Sunnis is Aisha. They call her al-Mu'minin, which is the mother of believers, right? Aisha is hated by most Shias. By the most revered female figure by Sunni Muslims. But the most revered female figure for Shia Muslims is Fatima, right? The daughter of the Prophet and the wife of the first Imam or the fourth Khalifa, right? So, and Omar kills her. Well,
I just wanted to add a little bit of detail to this, and especially kind of maybe focus on some of the things that both sides agree on. So here are some of the details: are that whatever kids Muhammad had, right? Whether you believe he had 4 daughters who survived adulthood, or he had the 3 sons, whatever it was, Fatima was the only one who. All of them predeceased him. Fatima is the only one who survived after Muhammad's death. So Muhammad's other daughters, they all died before he died, right?
Right.
But Fatima is the only one who lived. Now, Fatima, how long did she live after Muhammad's death? She lived 6 months.
Right.
After Muhammad's death. So she died 6 months after Muhammad died. And the other thing is, that these people, Banu Hashim, the Ali's followers, including Ali and Fatima, did not pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr, right? Who was the elected caliph or the first khalifa. They did not pledge allegiance until after Fatima's death. So 6 months for 6 months after Muhammad died, there was chaos. There's a lot of family conflict. Fatima, some people say she was under house arrest along with Ali. They were being forced to give pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr. They didn't, and then after Fatima dies, we had the allegiance. It's pledged to Abu Bakr. There was a really interesting sort of offbeat theory that I found compelling by Wilfred Madelung, who's a scholar of heresiography, or anyway, I won't get into the details of that. But what he says is that since Fatima was the only surviving child of Muhammad, and this is kind of interesting, so typically that would make her his main heiress and his main successor. So technically she would be the successor. According to the Quran itself, right, when the Quran talks about succession inheritance, she would have inherited 7/8 of his property and his rights. So all of his estate, everything he got, she would have gotten 7/8 of it. And his surviving wives collectively would just get 1/8. And this is according to Quranic law. So this is something that can't be disputed by either side. But she wasn't given her due for the reason that Armin pointed out, that they said, well, this estate, it's Muhammad's, inheritance goes to everybody.
Right.
So it's not going to be going according to the Quran. And she was essentially saying, and Ali was saying, this inheritance should be given to us based on Quranic law. We should be getting 7/8 of it.
Right.
And all of his wives should be getting 1/8.
Right.
So
you could basically, simple way of looking at it is a war between the daughter of Muhammad and the wives of Muhammad, and who?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Go.
Yes. Right. So you have Fatima and you have Ali on one side, and then you have his wives on the other, and this is an inheritance thing. Now, when it comes down to the Quran, which everybody agrees on, according to the Quran, the rules are clear, right? Fatima wants to go according to the rules of the Quran, right? The wives don't want to go according to the rules of the Quran because they think this is an exception.
This is a pro-Shia argument that I never considered.
No, this is a Quran.
I know, but I'm saying this is one point for Shias that I didn't consider before. That this is a very strong point for Shias.
It's a strong point for Shias, and everything with the timeline, the 6 months afterwards, all of that, that's kind of interesting. So what happened is that Omar was really pissed about this, right? Omar definitely Omar, by the way, is responsible for the conquest of Islam. So you can tell a little bit about his personality. This is a guy who, before motorized transport, before air travel, before mail, before paper, before like fucking email or anything like that, this is a guy who within just a matter of decades was able to spread Islam, from that's sort of Eastern Europe or even parts of Western Europe all the way to the Indian subcontinent, like during his lifetime. So so
just to be clear, if the stories are true, which is highly doubtful, the reason why Islam became an empire wasn't because of Muhammad. When Muhammad died, the domain of Islam was very small. It wasn't even all of Arabia. But it was Omar, the second Khalifa, that spread Islam far and wide. And he was like, he seemed like a military genius. He was very aggressive. He was the most
extremely ambitious, right?
Yeah.
He was extremely ambitious. He did not have. You can't do that. Like, you're not going to spread Islam at that time if it's supposed to be such a comprehensive philosophy that you have to understand.
Right.
You're not going to spread it by sitting around and holding seminars in the desert and passing out pamphlets. Right. So that's why they say Islam was spread by the sword. That's the reason for his speed. So if you look at this guy's personality, he was obviously very aggressive and very ambitious. So he could not have been happy with this whole succession thing and the fact that Ali was not pledging allegiance.
And
right?
he's also one of the most hated figures in Iran when it comes to Islamic ideology, both by religious Iranians and non-religious Iranians.
Yeah, the Shias hate him.
The Shias hate him for killing Fatima and also being against Ali, taking the rights from Ali. But the non-religious the anti-Islamic Iranians hate him because he's the guy that invaded Iran. He's the guy that brought Islam to Iran. But go on.
Right, but
he was also killed. But one thing that Iranians love, again, this is I'm not saying any of this is right or wrong, but Omar was killed by his slave, which was a Christian. Which was a Christian from Iran. So he was killed by his Iranian slave, which a lot of Iranians see as poetic justice. But go on.
Yeah, so I mean, so essentially, he was very upset. So the Shia version is that he was so pissed at this thing that he went and he set fire to Fatima's house, as Armin said. One of his was it Khalid bin Walid? I think one of his deputies or whatever opened the door really, really hard, and that caused Fatima to miscarry, and it eventually killed her. So after she died, then she's gone. This whole idea of the inheritance eventually becomes kind of moot. And Ali,
you're right. That takes care of the inheritance issue.
Right. So then Ali is sort of now he's like, okay, well, you know what? He pledges allegiance.
Yes, and this is again another thing that a lot of followers of Ali hated because he pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr. But Shias today remind you that, unlike Abu Bakr, Omar, and Osman, which were the first three caliphs, just to clarify, we didn't mention this. According to Sunnis, there are four caliphs. First one being Abu Bakr, second one Omar, third one Osman, and then Ali being the fourth caliph. According to Shias, that's all fucking bullshit. The first imam is Ali, and then we have 12 other imams. 12 are Shia, which is the main Shia Islam. But
the caliph thing, it's maybe something that a lot of Shias didn't subscribe to, but that was a political reality. Like, Ali did work.
Of course. But this is what Shias remind you of us today, is that Abu Bakr, Omar, and Osman, they wanted power. They were hungry for power. Ali, the reason why he's supposed to be imam is because he wanted it the least. right? Mm-hmm. They say he didn't even want to be in power. He went to power because of the Ummah. And when he pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr, he did it for the sake of the Ummah, because he didn't want war. He didn't want division. He wanted peace in the Ummah, in the Islamic community. So he basically pledged allegiance to do whatever it takes to not cause division in the Ummah. And this is what the Shia narrative. And right. he was, even when he eventually became the Khalifa, which became the fourth Khalifa, his entire Caliphate was marked with war and bloodshed, which Ali always hated, and he couldn't seem to stop. And he felt like he was cursed. Like he always mentioned that he would rather do anything else than being responsible for Muslims killing other Muslims. But he was plagued by it the entire time. But go on.
Right, and he would still be plagued by it today. So that is that's a part of it. I think that when it comes to after the death of Muhammad and that successorship, I think that part of it plays very well with the Shia narrative. If you're Shia, you've got Quranic law of inheritance on your side. You've got the historical accounts and everything like that on your side. So I think you have probably a stronger argument.
I have some strong arguments for when it comes, like when we get to theology, which we should get at some point. Yeah, I have some strong points for Sunnis. By the way, I know it's funny that when
in the history,
when we say strong points, we're not saying any of these are right, because obviously we're atheists.
Armin, but we know that. Yeah.
No. I'm saying we're going to have new audience, so people are going to be like, why are these atheists are saying which side is right? The way we're saying is something is right or wrong, the way you have to think about it is like imagine if we were really hardcore Star Wars fans and we were writing fan fiction, and we were arguing that this fan fiction is not right because it's not consistent with the Star Wars universe, right? So if you say, okay, you have a point here, this fan fiction doesn't make sense, it's not consistent, we're not saying that Star Wars is real. We're not making the claim that the Star Wars universe exists. We're just seeing that the internal consistency within the world that they have created, the imaginary world that they have created. But go on, Ali.
Right. So I think I wanted to move on to now we have the whole thing that the Shia narrative, but when the Shia talk about, they try to make excuses for why Ali worked with the other three caliphs. Right. When they start talking about that, I think they're on much weaker ground, because Ali did work closely with Abu Bakr. He worked with Umar. He worked with Usman.
I will defend them. They say it was for the sake of the Ummah. He worked with them for the sake of the Ummah.
Yeah, but there's a lot more that goes into it. So, for example, okay, I'll give you one example. As Armin said, there are four caliphs, right, in Sunni Islam. That's Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, right? And then with the Shia, they believe in spiritual leaders called the Imams. That starts with Ali, right, who was his son-in-law, and then after that, his sons, the grandsons of Muhammad, right? So Ali and Fatima's sons, Hassan, Hussein. Some people don't think of Hassan; they just agree with Hussein. But anyway, so Hussein, Zain al-Abidin.
Hassan is the most ignored Imam in Shias. But go on.
Hassan, the Ismaili Shias don't even recognize him.
Really?
As one of the
okay, let's not bring Ismailis to this, because they're not. I mean,
they're fringe. Forget
fringe.
the Ismailis.
Okay.
Sorry,
forget the Ismailis. Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway,
I mean, we should talk about them because at some point, because they were the first Shias in power in Egypt.
Yeah, they were.
Okay, but
they actually have a very interesting history, but I think that's a whole other episode.
Okay.
And anyway, so Jafra Sadiq, right, who is the sixth Imam, was probably the most important Imam out of the 12 in terms of history and source of hadith, right? So the one, just like the Sunnis, basically.
Wait, why all of a sudden jump to Jafar? We didn't even talk about Hussein.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm coming to it. Just wait for it for a second. So Jafra Sadiq was one of the most important Imams in Shiism. Just like for the Sunnis, the source of hadith are the Sahaba, the people who lived with Muhammad and his companions, who wrote down everything, or actually memorized everything that he did, and then later transmitted it orally to down many generations. So that hadith, that's a source of hadith for Sunnis, like Bukhari, Muslim, all of that stuff. For Shia, it comes from the family of Muhammad. The Shia argue that, hey, who would know Muhammad better his cousin, his family, the people who are hanging out with him, having dinner with him, talking to him all the time, getting life lessons from him, or a bunch of guys who just hung out with him for a couple of years and just observed and noted everything down. So that's
and they remind us that the relationship between Ali and Muhammad was way stronger than Abu Bakr and Muhammad. Ali was raised in Muhammad's household, and they say Ali was so many things to Muhammad other than his cousins. They remind us that because Muhammad raised Ali as a child, Muhammad was also a father to him, not just a cousin. And even when he was an adult, they were always hanging out with each other. So they also were a brother to each other. And eventually, when Muhammad married Fatima, he was also his father-in-law. So they say there's so much to say about the relationship between Ali and Muhammad, and Ali would have known Islam best. Ali was raised by Muhammad, so no one else could have known Islam as good as Ali would. Yeah, but
that's exactly the thing. If you go down like 100 years from now, if somebody wants to know me or Armin,
right,
or like Ali Rizvi, if you want to know what he was like, would you go to my family and the people who lived in my house and were in close contact with me all the time,
right,
and had relationships with me, or would you go with a bunch of people who just hung out with me and took notes? So that is that's the Shia Sunni difference. This is one of the roots of the theological differences between Shia and Sunni are the sources of hadith. Anyway, but we will get to the theology. But back to Jafra Sadiq. So Jafra Sadiq was a source of most of the Shia.
Can you tell people who Jafra Sadiq is? He's the one of the imams.
Sixth imam.
Yeah. So
out of the 12 imams, he is the sixth one. Now, what's interesting about him is his ancestry, and this is where
let's see if I remember. Actually, Ali is one. Hassan, Hussein. I'm putting myself up for
Zain al-Abidin.
No, Zain al-Abidin. Baqir, Jafar Sadiq. 7 is Kazim. Yes.
Musa al-Kazim, yeah.
8 is Reza, which is buried in Iran.
That's where the name Rizvi comes from.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Rizvi is all descendants of Reza.
9, I forgot. 10 is 10 is... Fuck! Hold on. This is...
Yeah, those other ones nobody cares about.
Yeah, but...
There's a Naki, there's...
Askari? 10 is Askari?
There's Zedi, there's all that.
And then 11 is the least important one, and then it becomes very important again. 12, which is Imam Mahdi.
Oh, no, Zedi was Zain al-Abidin. Anyway, so that's okay. That's not a whole lot of fun. You can always Wikipedia them. You can look them up.
No, I'm really ashamed that I don't know the name of the 11 Imam. Was it Askari?
Okay.
Wait.
Look them up, Armin, but don't narrate that list again. It's excruciating. So anyway, back to Jafra Sadiq.
Askari was 11.
Yeah, so Jafra Sadiq was number 6, right? And he was the most important, or number 5 for Ismailis. Sorry,
Hadi was 10.
He's one of the most important ones because he is where a lot of these narratives about Muhammad's life and how Shia should practice their religion, not Sunnis, but Shia should practice their religion. A lot of that comes from the narrative of Jafra Sadiq. Now, here's where it's interesting, where it's not just a theological difference. So it's not that they just pledged allegiance and they just stayed together for the sake of the ummah. Jafra Sadiq is a descendant not only of Ali, right, and Fatima, but also of Abu Bakr. Now, how is that? Right? After Abu Bakr died, right, the widow of Abu Bakr, whose name was Asma, Ali married her. And when Ali married her, he adopted Abu Bakr's son, whose name was Muhammad. So Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr was Abu Bakr's biological son and Ali's adopted son. Right? So this is a guy, again, it goes beyond just working together for the sake of the ummah. So Muhammad bin Abu Bakr is his biological father is Abu Bakr and his adopted father is Ali. So for two guys who absolutely did not like each other, Muhammad is kind of Muhammad bin Abu Bakr is the other thing. So Muhammad bin Bakr, his great granddaughter, was the mother of Jafra Sadiq. Right, so it comes from both sides. So
wait, what is the main point that you're trying to make? I lost because I was looking. What is the main point that you're trying to make? The
main point that I'm trying to make is that when we say that Ali only pledged allegiance for the sake of keeping the ummah together, that's not just it. He actually adopted the son of Abu Bakr. He married Abu Bakr's widow. The son of Abu Bakr.
All of those was for creating unity. Come on. Anyways.
thought he adopted his kid, Armin, and then the kid became one of his generals.
I mean,
his kid, Abu Bakr's kid, eventually.
Because Ali was so, again, this is Shia narrative. Because Ali was just so kind. He was forgiving to the people that wronged him the most. He was just his pure heart.
We talked about the aftermath of Muhammad's death and why that gave some strong credence to the Shia.
I'm just telling you what Shia will tell you. But we need to get to the most important figure in Shia Islam, which is not Ali.
Yeah. I talked to a Shia scholar who trained in Qom who did not know this.
Okay.
You actually didn't know this. So most Shias that I've talked to, they don't even know this. They don't know that Ali actually adopted. One of his sons was actually the adopted.
I actually read this in this book. Where was this? This is a book. This is a very fun book, by the way. Is it showing mirror image or right? No, it's showing mirror image. So it's not. It's called. This is a very easy read because most of the other sources are very, tough to read. This one is Muhammad, His Life Based on the Earlier Sources by Martin Lings. And I
don't think it's showing mirror image. Hold it up again. Oh yeah, it is.
It is showing mirror image. So that's why I read it. So
you have a symmetrical face. I couldn't even tell. That's beauty, by the way.
Okay, thanks.
Because you're Shia. Anyway, go on. Yeah.
Ex-Shia. What was I saying? You lost my train of thought.
Oh, talking about the book.
No, but I was saying we need to talk. We need to get. Okay, so Ali is. This is a lot of people might find it surprising, but the most important person and again, a lot of Shias would get angry for me saying this. The most important person in Shia Islam is neither Muhammad or Ali. It's who? Hussein.
Yeah.
Hussein, which doesn't even enter the story until later. So Hussein enters the game. What happens? Do you want to get to that, or do you have anything else?
But I want to talk about another place where the Shia narrative fails, like when they talk about, he just did this for that. So not only did he marry the widow and adopt the kid, later on, Jafra Sadiq actually was the teacher of the founders of at least two of the Sunni madhabs.
I'm not seeing this as a very important point. I mean,
think it's a very important point.
I think Shias will. I mean, if Shias could hire me, I could come up with a million excuses for all.
No. I'm not trying to. That's not the only point, Armin.
Right.
The point is this: that when we talk about all these massive differences between Shias and Sunnis, when we actually go back and we look at these people for all of their familial spats that they had, that families have, and they obviously did at that time, right? For all of that, the main founders of the four schools of thought in Sunni Islam were students of the sixth Shia Imam.
So right? I actually know what the Shias will tell you this. They tell you about
this is something that's agreed upon by both Sunnis and Shias.
I know, and Shias' narratives is like, look, our Imams are so good that even Sunnis cannot deny how good they are.
That's not why I'm saying it. I'm not saying it because of course Shias are going to have.
I just don't think this is that. I mean, we're going to have a disagreement. So I don't think that's important.
I actually agree with you. It's not important if you're trying to argue against Shias, but I'm not talking about who's winning which side of the debate. I'm just saying from our point of view, forget about their arguments, forget about what the Shia is going to say, Sunni is going to say. This is actually just history. It's a very...
there was people having relationship with each other. That's what I would expect.
Not only that, but theological kinship with each other as well.
Right, because actually most of the theological drift came a lot later, though, right? I mean, even until Jafar Sadiq, the main opposition was like, Ali should have been the successor, but Abu Bakr got it. That was the main thing, even at that point. This whole idea of like we are following a different theology and different religion, it came a lot later. Even to that day, they didn't see it as a new religion or a different branch of Islam, right? They're just like, we have some political differences, right?
Sure, but just generally, just for the sake of the record, Abu Hanifa, the Hanafi school of thought, the madhab, and the Maliki madhab, both of their founders were actually students of Jafra Sadiq, who was the sixth Shia Imam. So their differences politically and everything like that, they all used to hang out together. It was beyond just for keeping it together.
And Sunnis might remind you that some of these Imams were great scholars, and they will remind you that they never themselves said that they're imams. Right?
Yeah.
They say this is some Shia bullshit that they just made up, and they call these 12 people imam, even though
that's a good point. Yeah, that is the right point. That's
right.
That is a counter argument that they would give. But again, I'm not talking about counter argument.
So Sunnis were like, yeah, Jafra Sadiq, he was a scholar. We recognize him as a great scholar, and we follow his teachings because he made some good points. So
I just find it.
But let me actually finish this point. And they're like, so fucking what? There are many other scholars out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Shias are saying, which is ridiculous in the eyes of Sunnis, is that these imams are infallible. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're not infallible. They're not imams. They never said they're imams. They never said that they're infallible. You're just pulling it out of your ass. But just because they're the son of few generations after Muhammad, you guys sound like a monarchy. This is what Islam came to destroy, and you guys are basically copying the way of the monarchs. But go on.
Mm. Yeah, I just think that whenever I have conversations, these are things that people don't really know, and when you tell them, then if it doesn't make them completely think that, okay, these are two that they were super, super friendly, it at least makes them think, okay, that the divisions weren't as severe as we have eventually built them up to be. That's all I'm saying. Historically, they weren't.
Right. Just to make a point.
Historically is in quotes.
Mahmoud is asking, could you please discuss how Shias became a minority compared to Sunnis? But like I said, there was no Shia Sunni at this point. Okay, Shia became a later. The whole idea of Shiism was an invention. These whole 12 Imam stuff, and it was just Islam back then. And this Shiism, because it was an opposition to mainstream Islam, of course it's going to be a minority because it's an opposition to what's mainstream, right? And that's what
Armin. I don't think that's it. I think there's a very simple reason that Shias were a minority and Sunnis are a majority. Shias didn't have an Umar. Right? They didn't have it's as simple as that.
Right.
Umar is responsible for the spread of Islam. Umar was very, very heavily Sunni leaning direction. He was one of the pioneers of Sunni Islam.
But at that point, there was no Shia Sunni when Umar was spreading.
There may not have been.
Right.
But when he went and he spread the Islam, what he aligned with, he aligned with Abu Bakr. He aligned with there were no hadith or collections or anything like that then, right? So those sources hadn't really shown up yet. But the theological aspects of Islam that he aligned with. I
kind of feel bad for Ali sometimes because, when Abu Bakr came to power, everyone were like, yes, we stand behind Abu Bakr. When Omar came to power, everybody stood behind Abu Bakr. When Osman came to power, actually Osman started some fucking divisions. But when Ali came to power, even his strongest followers started leaving him one by one. And, poor guy. Once you learn a little bit more about him, you're like, no, fuck him. But just general story, it feels like he was wronged by everybody. But go on.
But that's the thing, and it's not just the fact that Omar was a really, really great warrior and he went and he did a lot of conquest. It's not that he was great and then Ali was just ordinary. Ali wasn't even ordinary. He wasn't even mediocre as a political leader. As a caliph, he was a complete failure. Osman was a complete failure. Right. No, Osman and Ali were known as politically they were failures. They were apparently great people. They're very respected and all that. But both Ali and Uthman were. Ali was apparently a great spiritual leader,
right?
Had a lot of influence, but his community remained very small because it was very family based. It wasn't based on a lot of the conquests and everything. It was more sort of philosophical, and he wanted to spread the ideas of Islam. Whereas Umar was going around just holding a sword to people's throats, like ISIS. ISIS actually follows Umar's example.
So Abu Bakr and Shias think Abu Bakr and Umar were both. They were powerful rulers, but they were bad Muslims, right? Maybe Umar, they actually admire Umar.
They were both very successful caliphs.
Right. Yes, but Osman gets a lot of hate for being neither a good Muslim and not power. Like he started ruling so bad that everything started falling apart. The whole division, the internal, war and everything started with Osman until he got killed. So he was neither a good Muslim nor a great, powerful leader. But the Shias would say the reason why Ali wasn't as powerful was because his piety, because he was a good Muslim, because he was always wanting to do the right thing, and the right thing was not always the politically correct thing to do. So he was like the non-politically correct Khalifa, which basically
like the Gandhi of the caliphs.
And because he always wanted to be fair to people, he started pissing people off. Like even when his family came asking for favors, he was like, no, I can't give my family favors. I have to be fair. So even his family would turn against him. Like we have stories that his brother came to him asking for money from the money of, the government's money to give him a little bit, donate to him. And Ali kept on saying no. And he said, like, just please a little bit. I'm poor. I need money. And Ali, what he did, which at the time seemed like a very kind thing, a very sweet thing to do. But now I think about it, it seems pretty fucking cruel. He took the metal rod, and his brother was blind, right? His half brother, I think. And when his brother was, he had his hand out asking for money. What is the money called from the money that it comes from the wealth of the Ummah? What is it called? Beitul Mal, okay. Right? So, and Ali, instead of putting money in his hand, he puts the metal rod in his hand, and his brother's hands get burnt. And Ali says, you can't even bear that amount of heat on your hand. So imagine how much heat I have to bear in hell if I actually show you some favoritism because you're my brother, and I give you the money from the Beitul Mal and give it to you. So they were like, and this is why everybody was against him, because of how fair he was, right?
Yeah.
And there's another story. I just have to tell you another story.
Go for it.
These are our childhood stories. When Ali was doing, like, writing out the taxes and putting all the numbers and everything and calculating and trying to doing work that was for governing, there's this man that comes to him and he said, like, I need to talk to you. And Ali asks him, is this a matter regards to governance, or is this a personal matter? And the man says, this is a personal matter. And Ali turns off the lamp and takes another lamp on, and he turns on that lamp. And the guy was like, what the fuck? Why you turn off one lamp and turn on another lamp? It was nighttime, by the way. It was dark. Ali says because the oil from that lamp was used from tax money, was the money from that we collected, and that's supposed to be used for for governing work. I cannot waste the oil that we use for tax from the tax if this is a personal matter. So I'm using the oil that I personally paid for this conversation, so I don't waste taxpayers' money. So this is the stories that we hear as children about how great Ali was. But anyways, go on.
Yeah. So So basically, where were we before that? Yeah. So this whole idea about how Ali was a good spiritual leader, but I think that there may be some element of truth to that he's tended to be, even though he was a statesman and he was also a warrior. He wanted to really keep the message of Islam, and Muhammad, his cousin who did this, he wanted to make sure it didn't get lost. So he was about preserving the legacy. So he wasn't as politically inclined as the others. Right, as Abu Bakr and Umar. So just technically, politically, he was just not a very successful caliph, and there was a lot of schism and a lot of factionism at the time that he was caliph.
And that's which ended up killing him at some point, right?
Yeah, which ended up killing him.
The Khawarij. Should we get into the Khawarij, or is that too much detail already?
Well, actually, if we're going to talk about Shia and Sunni, we have to talk about Uthman and the war that between him. And,
oh my God, this needs to be a 2-part or 3-part series, right? I guess.
Right. But I think that we can touch on that pretty quickly. Okay. So what happened was after Uthman died. Right. So here, a couple of interesting things happened here. So during Abu Bakr's time is a lot of the hadith are collected orally, and that process is happening throughout. When Umar comes on, there's a conquest. Islam spreads like wildfire right across the region. When Uthman comes on, the most significant part of his reign was a compilation of the Quran.
Quran. He's the only thing that Muslims can thank him for, because he fucked up everything else, but he's responsible for the Quran as we know it today.
Yeah, which he kind of screwed up too, because
but they don't admit that.
Yeah, it's not the Quran the way it's written right now.
Right.
Is not written in the order of revelation. It's not written chronologically. Everything's like kind of order. I have no idea how they made sense of it or how the people. But the Uthmanian Quran is kind of it's not in order of revelation. Everything's like all over the place. So, but it is.
And Aisha had some say in what makes it in the Quran. Did you know that?
Well, I mean, she also had a say in what didn't make it in, like the Rajam verses and stuff. So, yeah, everybody had a say.
Osman and Aisha were very close, which is why Aisha was very pissed.
But if we start going into like how the Quran was compiled, we have a whole episode on that, and that is a whole other topic. That's really, really interesting.
No, but this part is also the relationship between Osman, the third Khalifa, and Aisha is very important, because when Osman, when Osman was killed, Aisha pointed the finger at Ali, and which led to the war that Aisha and Muawiyah and everybody else started. This is the first. Is this the first civil war? Yeah, this is the first civil war.
She either pointed the finger at him, or she said that he didn't do enough to apprehend the thing. So
he kind of was saying, if you're not doing any. Okay, so when Osman was killed, so Osman was assassinated, right? So the first Khalifa was killed, I think, in bed. The second Khalifa was killed by a non-Muslim.
They're reaching out fortune cookies. He was killed in bed.
Right.
You know what they do with fortune? Oh yeah, no, forget it.
Okay, but I'm just saying the first two Khalifas died, but the third Khalifa died in a way that was a major crisis in Islam. This is the third Khalifa, very short after Muhammad, and the third Khalifa was not killed by disease or just by old age. He was not killed by non-Muslims. He was killed by Muslims. And this is Muslims now starting for the first time killing other Muslims. And this was a huge thing. This is the first sign of major division in the Ummah. The whole idea of Muhammad was, we are an Ummah, we're going to become united, we will always stay united, and it's us against non-Muslims forever, right? We were going to make a super tribe, and it's the best tribe, and, we're all going to be united, and, nothing could defeat us as long as we're united, right? And now, the third Khalifa, he does something, which we're not going to get into the details, which pisses off a lot of Muslims, and they come to his house, and they kill him. And Muslims are like, okay, this is the end of Islam, I guess. Muslims killing other Muslims, we're fucked, we're down, everything is done. And it's Ali, and the whole point of now finally making Ali after Osman's death the Khalifa was, this is the guy that everyone loves. I guess we need Ali right now because we are so divided that we need to bring somebody popular into power to make everybody happy again. Like even the people that were like, we want Ali, they weren't shutting up about Ali for all this long. Now that there's division, if we make him the Khalifa, now people are going to be like, yay, Ali is finally Khalif, and then we could hold hands and sing Kumbaya after this, and we're Ummah again, we're united again. But the problem is that this is where Muawiyah enters the game, and this is when Aisha uses her hate for Ali as an excuse for saying to Ali, like, they killed Osman, right? Osman had a good relationship with Aisha, and you either you have to hold people, you have to give us the people that killed him. And if you don't,
you have to complete the investigation, because there
was a conspiracy theory that you could be responsible if you're not like. Why are you not investigating this and not bringing them forward? Are you responsible? Did you plan this? Are you in the cahoots with the people that killed Osman, right? And this is when Muawiyah also jumps on the bandwagon. An important part about Osman being the third Khalifa is the Osman's family also were a really rich and wealthy family, right? And Muawiyah was also is from the same family, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Umayyad family, right?
Yeah, they're from the Umayyad, Yazid, Muawiyah. They were all part of the Umayyad.
The interesting thing, a lot of people think whenever there's a revolution, things change a little bit, but people with the wealth and power and connections always come back to power again, right? And Osman being the third Khalifa was a confirmation of that, because their family was the family that was one of the most important one in Quraysh and ruled Kaaba and everything else. But with Islam coming, they felt like all of that is over. But it seems like when Osman became the third Khalifa, like, hey, look, the people that used to rule this land now rule it again. So apparently the people with money and power will always find their way back up, right? And when Osman died, Muawiyah, which was from the same family, he again tried to. Ali became the Khalifa, and Muawiyah was like, okay, our family was wronged. We were killed. Like he sneaked his way back into power, and after Ali's death, Muawiyah managed to. Again, there's a lot of politics here. There's a battle. There's a Khawarij.
Let's just summarize it really, really quickly. Like so what Muawiyah does is that he teams up with Aisha to get into war with Ali, which was like the first civil war within Islam, right? Right. Because Ali did not satisfy what they wanted, what Aisha
They had Osman's bloody shirt as a rallying cry, right? They acted like they wanted justice for Osman, but what they really wanted was to take power away from Ali.
Right. So, but basically, they had a rivalry with him because Ali was like, I don't know who killed him, and they're like, find out who killed him, and so they had this sort of fight, and eventually that settles. Eventually, Ali dies. His sons Hassan and Hussein grow up.
They kill Ali. They kill Ali when he was praying by poisoned sword on his from in the back of his head. And Muawiyah was attacked as well at the same time, but Muawiyah survives, which a lot of Shia say this was whole Muawiyah's plan, but he had a staged attack on himself just to say that it wasn't me. But there's dispute about that. Right. But
next generation now the Umayyads are very cool. Armin, we gotta stick to the main stuff because we have a half hour left. Okay. We have questions that we need to ask. Right. So let's do this. We could probably continue some of this in another episode too, but let's just
let's make this a 3-piece process, right? So the first episode about Shia versus Sunni was the early history, right? The second episode, let's do it about the main theological differences, right? And then the third episode about we'll make it in modern day political differences.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's perfect. Okay. So right now, just to continue with this, so now that the next generation comes in, right? So Muawiyah, again, teamed up with Aisha to wage war against Ali, is now he has a son named Yazid, right? So Yazid is the next caliph. Muawiyah becomes a caliph, the Umayyad caliph.
This is the name that makes this name Yazid makes Shia's blood boil. Like they hate this name Yazid more than
giving away the ending before.
More than I'm building anticipation. This guy is hated more than the devil, more than like the word Iblis doesn't. Which means the devil, Satan, doesn't make...
It triggers them.
It triggers them. The word Yazid triggers
Shia into a snowflake.
Right.
Yeah, cuck.
Yeah, if you call somebody like a Yazid, that's the word... Like, anyways, go on. Yeah.
Okay, so they have kids. So Yazid now is the Umayyad Caliph, right? Hussein, who is Ali's son. So you've got Ali's son and you've got Yazid's son. right? Muawiyah's son is Yazid, and Ali's son is Hussein. Hussein is right now, he's in Mecca, okay? So he's now they're opposing sides. Right now, this guy.
So Yazid is part of the. This is now we have. Okay, so just to where we are in history, we had Muhammad, and then the period of the fourth Khalifa, the Sunnis refer to as the Rashidun. This is the period of the rightfully guided ones, right? They say the rightfully guided. This is the Sunni terminology. So the fourth Khalifa are done and over with. Now we're entering a new age, and which is marked by an empire called the Umayyads, right? So just to see where we are in history, first you have Muhammad, then you have the fourth Khalifa or the Rashidun, then you have the Umayyad dynasty, then you have the Abbasid dynasty, then you have a whole bunch of other dynasties. The Ottomans, and then you have the end of the...
Right.
But
so
the end of the Islamic
Empire.
Empire.
The third Caliph was part of the Umayyad.
Yes.
He was part of the Umayyad clan. So
but Muawiyah would be the first of the Umayyad dynasty. So this is the beginning of the Umayyad dynasty, because Osman didn't turn it into a dynasty. Muawiyah kind of did what the Shias do with the inheritance. Like, my son is going to be... He promised that Hassan and then Hussein is going to be the Khalif when he dies. But then he changed that, and he said, no, my son Yazid will be the Khalif after I die. And but by saying that, he turned the Islamic Empire into a dynasty. So this is the beginning of the Umayyad dynasty. But go on.
Right. So now Yazid is in power. And now Yazid is in power, and Hussein, who's Ali's son, Muhammad's grandson, is in Mecca, right? And Yazid wants Hussein to pledge allegiance to him. A lot of this stuff is about pledging allegiance.
Right.
And Hussein's in Mecca. He's like, no, screw you. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, because it was promised to him. Again,
right.
Hassan, which was the second Imam of the son of Ali. Hassan and Hussein are both Ali's sons. They accepted Muawiyah. They accepted Muawiyah. They made peace with Muawiyah with the promise that after Muawiyah's death, Hassan, which is Ali's son, will become Khalif.
Right.
And when they said, yeah, when Hassan died, and then now Hussein is alive. Hussein is the second son of Ali.
So Hassan and Muawiyah had a treaty.
Right? that okay, now Hassan is dead. When you die, I will be Khalifa. But now, when they backed up, they basically. They had an excuse, not a good excuse. But then when Muawiyah died, Yazid actually became Khalifa, and Yazid now demands allegiance from Hussein, right?
Right.
And
the treaty wasn't actually that Hassan would become. The treaty was that Hassan had said, okay, I will accept Muawiyah, you as Caliph.
Right.
I will accept you as a Caliph, but as long as you don't name a successor. And the successor should be... wasn't
it that Hassan will become?
No. It was that do not name a successor. We want the world, the Momins or the believers, to choose a successor after that. Right. So you're appointing yourself, but you can't appoint a successor. But then what happened was that when Yazid came around and Yazid became appointed the Caliph, the successor to Muawiyah, then Hussein was like, okay, well, fuck you. You know, like we had a treaty. You screwed it over. You weren't supposed to name a successor. I don't accept you.
Right.
So my brother accepted your dad, sure, but I'm not going to accept you.
Right.
So now this is a problem. Now Yazid is pissed, and Yazid's like, nope, you need to accept me, and he's like, no, and he wanted to kind of force him to do it, to accept him.
And this is the great betrayal of the Kufa, the people from Kufa.
So now what happens is that Kufa in Iraq, right? In Kufa, there are a bunch of people in Kufa who are who are Shia, basically followers of Ali, right? I mean, this term wasn't really there then either.
They basically supported Hussein. They were like, Hussein, you should be like, They supported Ali and his family,
right?
And they agreed that this was robbed from Ali, and Hussein should be Khalif right now.
So they tell Hussein, they're like, Hussein,
they send him a letter.
Yeah, they send him a letter. They're like, come here. Well, of course they sent it. They couldn't call him. It's not like they were on fucking WhatsApp. It's like, oh, dude,
right.
New phone. Who is? No, but he. So they. Yeah,
no, but the point is that he wasn't in Kufa. Where was Hussein at this time?
Hussein was in Mecca.
Okay, yeah,
he was in Mecca at the time. So he's in Mecca, and then they send him the letter. They're like, hey, dude. No, it was in Mecca. Okay. I don't know. One of those. I think it was in Mecca. Okay. So he tells him, and he's like, hey, come on over. over here, we're going to go and we're going to get this Yazid guy out of power. We're going to revolt against him.
Yeah, they said, like, you have no idea how many people here will die for you. If you just show up here, we'll pick up...
Lead us rebellion.
Lead this rebellion. We all will pick up swords for you, and we will destroy Yazid, and we will make you Khalif. Just somehow, right? So they're like, these people can't be... The Kufites can't be trusted. So, but Hussein went.
Yeah, so Hussein decides to go, and he keeps on going. Then he travels, grabs his whole family, grabs a whole bunch of his companions, and he had traditionally supposed to have had 72 companions,
including 72 male.
No, there were probably more, but there were 72 who died. 72 is a big name and a big number. And,
I don't know. The Shias are obsessed with 72. There was an Iranian bombing also that 72 people died.
Right. Yeah. So they go towards Kufa, and then this is where the famous incident of Karbala happens. So Karbala is a city in Iraq. Okay, it's close to the river, and they're basically, Hussein sets up camp there, and then these guys, Yazid's people, right? They send like thousands of guys. The whole army surround them.
Okay, and by the way, this number of Yazid's army is so exaggerated by Shia that is fucking ridiculous. Like, they keep increasing the number. So Hussein is...
What is the number that you heard?
Okay, I hear so many different numbers, but one of the numbers that we were given in school, we had like a secret atheist math teacher that calculated this number.
Of those secret math teachers.
We had a private class with him, and he was showing us how ridiculous these numbers were, because he put Yazid's armies. He said if all of the soldiers of Yazid were standing like shoulder to shoulder, they wouldn't, based on the number that they're giving us, they wouldn't fit in that desert, and they would be visible from space, right? So, like, because the Shias wanted to say how poor Hussein was and how evil Yazid was, so there were like 72 people against like a gazillion people, and apparently they managed to hold off that fight for how long did that fight last? I forgot. For a long time.
I don't know. Yeah. So, anyway. I like the way you're coloring all of this stuff in. It's kind of cool. I'm just kind of giving like the drive, but it's like the incident, and that's what makes the whole story. Like the whole Karbala incident, it would be kind of like just a regular war story otherwise. But unless you bring the horse crying and all of this other throwing the blood towards the sky, all of those,
the arrow and the baby, the guy trying to get water and his hands get cut, and then his other hands get cut, and he tries to get water with his teeth, with grabbing it with his teeth, and his head gets cut off. Just this one battle. There's like you have no idea. This battle between Yazid and Hussein. Shias are so obsessed with this battle, and it seems like every second of this battle was documented, and there are so many stories about different parts of this battle. Every couple, every love story, every tragedy that you could think of happened in this battle. And you could fill out so many books about the alleged stories that happened in this battle. It was just...
They keep on building, too. You start, even in my own lifetime of being a Shia, I have heard stories added. And I'm like, okay, where the fuck did that come from? So, but in any case, so this battle, let's just do this and let's wrap it, because we're close to the ending
okay, before you settle, sorry, this battle was also what defined Shia Islam. Okay, so like I said, eventually defined, like not even after that. Like, this story is what created the identity of Shiism, right? And this became, you know how, if you think about the story of Islam, the main story that captures the attention, that makes the identity of a Muslim, when Islam is when the first verse of Islam came down, Iqra bismika allazi khalaq, all of that came down, right? That's the most important story. That was Islam gets defined as, but when it comes to the Shia identity and what creates the Shia identity is this battle in Karbala between Yazid and Hussein. So go on, what happened?
So what happens is that they basically siege them. They cut off all the water supply. They start they put their soldiers by the river so that nobody's able to get water, right? And for several days, these people for 3 days, actually. I mean, they arrived there from this is where the month of Muharram. So the first month of the Islamic year, Muharram is celebrated by what should be celebrated, like the Chinese New Year, the Gregorian New Year, all of that. But for Shias, the first of Muharram is a tragic day, because they mourn the first days, because this is when all of this stuff happens. So the journey happens, they get to Karbala. Yazid's army comes in and they sieges them, and they siege them, and now they're basically surrounded. They cut off water on the 7th of Muharram, and for 3 days, right, Hussein and all of his family, his kids, all of that, they don't have any water. Mm-hmm. And eventually, after a while, you don't have water. You got to go fight for it. So the third day, after 3 days of no water, on the 10th of Muharram, which is also known as Ashura, right? Ashura is the seminal event that you've seen pictures of everybody beating themselves, self-flagellating.
You either go like this, or you go like.
They can't see you. But you beat your chest. Yeah. You use blades. You make yourself bleed for Hussein and all of that. So you do that, and this is kind of, I think, the closest thing that's relatable to it is Jesus' crucifixion.
I was going to get to that in the theological episode, but don't go into that there.
But
right?
Okay, so I won't go into it too much.
Right.
But essentially, what happens is that Hussein sacrifices his entire life. I mean, he knows that he's going to get killed, but he's like, I gotta.
He died for our sins, kind of.
Instead of pledging allegiance, he could have pledged allegiance and totally had water for his entire family, all of this stuff. But apparently God shows him heaven. He's like, this is where your entire family's going, dude. So it's okay. And he goes out there and he he fights them instead of pledging allegiance, fights them. All of them get killed except for the women and the kids. And then the women and the kids are taken
the fourth imam.
And then Al-Abidin,
because he was a kid.
Imam, he survives because he was sick.
Oh yeah,
he was sick,
and he was
right?
he was a child also.
He wasn't that young. Okay. He was just ill.
Okay.
Right. So then after that, he was basically a successor in Shiism. He became the Imam.
Right.
Anyway, so this happens as Karbala. So Hussein, the family of Muhammad, the Ahlul Bayt, right, which the Shia revere, is completely massacred by the Caliph of the Islamic of Islam, the Islamic Caliphate, and the Caliph who was Yazid.
This is so tragic. Okay, so Ali was killed. Now Fatima was killed, and now Hussein is killed by the powers that be, right? Which is so tragic. And this is again goes into the identity of Shias, why they always think they're always oppressed. And which they see as a sign of God, but which we'll get to later, I guess, in another episode.
Yeah, and then Ali's daughter, who's Zainab, right? She goes around, and after this whole thing happens,
you missed a part. Okay, so there's a difference in narrative here between Sunnis and Shias, right? Because a lot of Sunnis don't claim Yazid and Muawiyah as people they revere. I see some of them do, but most of them don't. Most of them I don't know why Shias are angry with us for killing Hussein. We don't revere Yazid. We don't revere Muawiyah. We just only revere the first four. Abu Bakr. I mean, we don't even revere them that much compared to Muhammad. It's revering people.
Yeah, eventually Yazid was not liked by any of them. Even the Sunnis largely.
I mean, even when it comes to the fourth Khalifa, the Sunnis say that we don't take it as far as Shias do, because Shias take it the reverence to the point of worship, according to Sunnis, which worship is only for God. But we get to that in the theological episode. I know a lot of Shias are going to say I'm making shit up, but I'll address that. But the difference in narrative is that some people say, and this was not, when I was learning this in school in Iran, this was never told to me, because Yazid is made to look like the most evil figure you could ever imagine. But I realize that there is an alternative narrative where Yazid is bad and he is wronging Hussein, but he didn't order for Hussein to be killed. His army commander, he did that without Yazid asking him. Mm-hmm. And that Yazid, I was shocked when I read this, because to me Yazid is like pure evil. But when I read some other narratives, Yazid actually cried when he saw when they brought Hussein's head and they threw it on the ground, and apparently Hussein Hussein looks like Muhammad. Hussein is the grandson of Muhammad, and the idea was that he looks a lot like Muhammad. So people that remember Muhammad would see Muhammad in Hussein. And apparently, when this happened, somebody, I think it was Zainab, I think she said this or somebody else, that this is the face that I remember Muhammad used to kiss when Muhammad played with him as a child, when he was a child, right?
Yeah, this is a legend.
This is a legend that like, look, this is what you do to the face of the person that your prophet used to kiss. Because the story is that Hussein was Muhammad's grandchild, and Muhammad used to play with him, and he would kiss him on the face. And when he said this, everybody started crying. And the Kufa, we forgot to mention the Kufites, when they have betrayed Hussein, they never showed up at battle, right? Mm. But when they saw his head, they all felt so guilty and miserable. Everybody was crying, and they realized what a huge crime they have committed, that they abandoned him when they needed him. And everybody was crying, and apparently Yazid was crying. And Yazid, and this is in the narrative that a lot of Shias will not ever agree with, but Yazid says, if I was there, I would have never let this happen. Mm. But even the Shias that say, okay, if he said that, why didn't he punish those? And some Sunnis say that, well, he didn't punish those because that would cause more division. So again, a lot of.
Anyway, yeah, that could go on. Those are all the details. But essentially, Karbala, the first civil war between what are now called Shia and Sunni, was between Aisha and Muawiyah, Yazid's father, and Ali, and then the second one was with their kids, between Yazid and Hussein.
Yes, so this is the second civil war, right?
Right. So Hussein became a martyr, and he is commemorated to this day by Shia. It's one of the most important things, and again, it's like the Jesus sacrifice, and we'll get to that in another episode.
Yeah, the reason why it looks very similar to us is because he went into that. According to Shias, at least, he knew that he was going to die, but he walked into that war anyways to save Islam, right?
Right. So he was a savior. He saved the faith from
by making himself a martyr. Like, for him, he knew he was going to die, but he knew that this will become a symbol, and he did it for the sake of preserving Islam. And the sins that we refer to is the sins of the Muslims, the Kufites, right? Is that how you refer to them, Kufites? I'm going to just say Kufites.
Yeah, Kufites is fine.
So it's basically he died for the sins of the Muslims, again, to preserve Islam. And to that, he was like a lamb going there to be sacrificed, and that's very much Jesus-like, right? Mm-hmm. Not that anybody's. Again, a lot of these things, a lot of people think they're copying each other. I don't think they're not. They're copying each other. I just think there are certain narratives that just work so well when it comes to the power of memes that you see them keep repeating themselves. And I will touch on a lot of those things when we go into the next episode. A lot of examples for that. But one thing about the story that is important that you're going to see come up in the next episode is that the significance in the story shows itself about how much it influences Shia's theology, which will be in the second episode, but also in the third episode, how much politically this story is used. And even modern, like how this story influenced many countries' politics throughout history by referencing to the story and using the story to gain people's sympathy and allegiance. So we'll touch on that as well. But we should just quickly go to the questions. I have some of them written down here. But if can you guys?
There's also kind of just a little tidbit for people. If I know correctly, this whole controversy about whether Mecca was in the Negev desert or whether it was in the Hijaz actually was related to Yazid as well.
Right.
So Abdullah ibn Abdul Zubair was like one of the. He was also in Mecca at the time. So Mecca, maybe Petra, I don't know. But anyway, so he also got into a spat. I'm not going to go into the details with Yazid, and then Yazid eventually sent an army, and that's when the Kaaba caught fire. So this guy actually moved the Kaaba entirely, and then the whole the supposition is that he moved it all the way south to the Hijaz, even though it was in the Negev Valley before. Anyway, forget that. But Yazid caused a lot of shit in Islamic history, and probably I think he's if there's anybody who is anti-Islam and who completely destroyed Islam in any way, I think Yazid is probably the one guy who did it. Whether it's for Shias with Karbala or whether it was this whole issue that he had with Abdullah ibn Abdul Zubair, whatever it was. Anyway.
Some people in the live chat are pointing out how much I enjoying these stories. Some guy is saying, Saffron Butter is saying, Armin, you're Shia through and through.
I was thinking of that. I was like, do you still have a lot of the Shia remnant thing in you, the storytelling and legends?
Well, this is what Uday was saying. Armin is practically jumping in his seat. But this, I always tell people, actually, I don't hide this. I think Islam is a lot more fun as an atheist, right?
Yeah.
The same way Viking ideology is fun if you don't believe in it. I think, like, for example, the Vikings were probably, if they were still around, they would be even worse than Islam as a barbaric, violent religion. But we get to enjoy them because nobody believes in it, and their gods Thor and Odin and Valhalla is just fun now because there's nobody being killed in that name. Or the Mayan religion, they're fun because they're just mythology and nothing else. So yeah, I like these stories, and I think that if a lot of Muslims think like, oh, there's something beautiful to this, I don't want to leave all this. If you introduce to them that, well, you don't have to believe in myth to be able to enjoy. If you could introduce more Muslims that the fact that, these myths could still be enjoyable if you acknowledge that they're bullshit and they're not true, they could still be enjoyed. And like, oh, wait, so I don't have to give up the things that I like. If I'm an atheist, I can still enjoy mythology. Then it might be easier for people to leave them. So yeah, these stories are fun for me, and I agree. I do know the Shia sides a little bit more because I was raised with Shia propaganda. But the interesting thing is that the Sunni parts become more interesting to me because I was brainwashed with the Shia narrative because of the differences, right? So every time you learn something about the Sunni side, and you're like, oh my God, this is not the way I learned it. So even the Sunni part becomes more interesting because you keep comparing it with what you were told. But go on, Ali.
Yeah, so I think I'm just going to go on to the patron questions. Right, and I think there's a lot of people over here that are like, oh, you guys just talking about fairy tales? Are these just myths? Yeah, of course. I mean, this is part of the mythology. We're actually discussing the differences between Shia and Sunni. So we're not talking about what we believe and what our thoughts are. We're talking about, what the different accounts are based on Shias and Sunnis and what their beliefs are. So we're enjoying these stories. Obviously, they're a lot of fun, but we're aware that they're stories, and we're not saying that any of them are like necessarily authentic.
But another thing is that if you know these stories, when we're trying to part of our activism is reaching out to Muslims and telling them why this is all fucking bullshit, right? And a lot of the times Muslims don't listen, assume that everybody that thinks Islam is bullshit hasn't really looked into it that much, right?
Yeah.
But when you start talking about these stories and show that you're interested in them and talk about the details, this will make many Muslims, not all of them, drop their guard and they're like, okay, these people cannot be that hateful. They actually are talking about these Islamic stories and they're interested in it. And they don't seem ignorant because they know about these stories more than most Muslims do. So it makes Muslims drop their guard and actually listen to, okay, then if you like these stories, then what's your problem with Islam then? So because they always just put all people that disagree with Islam as people that don't know Islam, this is surprising to a lot of them, and they start actually paying attention to the problems that you have with Islam. And, so knowing these stories helps you reach out to Muslims a lot more. But go on, Ellie.
Right. So Daniel Yerk is asking, what happened to the guy that brought her back? And he's talking about Aisha, the incident of the necklace.
I don't know.
What happened to him, and did they kill him? So I just looked at his name was Safwan ibn al-Muattal al-Sulami. He was not killed.
No.
He was just falsely accused of adultery, and I guess when that verse came down from Surah 24, that kind of resolved everything.
Yeah, if you had killed him, it would have been very bad for Muhammad, because it would be an admission that he's guilty and that Aisha slept with him.
Right, so he was the one who was accused of that. But eventually, I'm seeing that he ended up somewhere in Armenia, and some people even say that he became governor of Armenia, and then he died over there. So
I didn't know
nothing
that.
too significant or interesting. Okay, so Dirty Dancer is saying this is some Jerry Springer shit. And,
There should be.
Hey, eventually it all starts out with.
There should be like a comedy video. I saw one of Jesus, right? Like Jesus, like in a Jerry Springer format, telling to his father. To what's his father's, like, Miriam's husband's name? Joseph.
Joseph, yeah.
Joseph. They tell him he's not your son. He jumps off the stage. There should be some comedy like that, like Ali and Abu Bakr and Muhammad on the couch with Jerry Springer. And
I was thinking of, like, when I read Fire and Fury, the book about the Trump White House. I kind of, when I was looking at the rivalry between Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner and Ivanka, that actually reminded me. It was like Trump was Muhammad, and then he had his friend, just Steve Bannon. Then he had his son-in-law, who was Ali or Jared Kushner, and his daughter Ivanka.
No, that's not much.
Ivanka,
yeah,
and they were actually they had a lot of rivalry. Like Steve Bannon and Ivanka and Jared were fighting for attention of Trump. It was actually really interesting. I don't know why I.
Some people mention Game of Thrones, and I'm a huge Game of Thrones fans, and I think we should try to see if we could connect, because as somebody said, Ali is Ned Stark. I think he would be the closest.
When I first saw Game of Thrones, I was looking at it. Like, this reminds me of all of those stories I heard when I was a kid about these Islamic history. But anyway,
next question.
Let's move on. We only have like 5 more minutes, so
okay.
Let's go through this
Come on, 10 more minutes, okay?
Okay, but we don't have too many questions. A lot of these are comments.
I wrote some of them down. Okay.
Okay, so Rational Guard is saying, do you two have personal opinions on what is likely to be factually true rather than considered what is sahih? And yes, actually, we've talked about that.
We're gonna have episodes.
We've talked about that quite a bit. So we've gone back and in the last podcast that we did about Quranic criticism, we talk a lot about which sources are true, which sources are not, what aspects of his and what contemporary historians say, non-Muslim historians say about it. So check out that episode. It's the last live stream we did. It was called Quranic criticism. So do check it out when you get the chance.
Right. Uday asked, there's a rumor that Sunni Saudi secretly funds Jewish Israelis to keep Shia Iran. Okay, Uday, ask this question when we have the third one, which is the political one. Yeah.
We'll do that. So let's bookmark it.
Yeah, so Dirty Dancer is saying, is the U.S. intervention, again, that would be for the third episode. Do you two have personal, there was something,
yeah,
personal opinions is like, you read that already.
So Southern California deplorable Henry Lindemann, is asking, so do Sunnis and Shias have separate hadiths? Actually, that's the reason. That is a main difference theologically. Right. The reason that they have completely different theological practices or beliefs is because of their sources of faith.
There's two sources. Okay, so when we get to the theological episode, which will be the second episode in the series, there's the two sources is this different source of hadith, but also different tafsir, different interpretations of certain verses in the Quran. We should like list the verses in the Quran that they have different interpretations.
Yeah, I was thinking I'm going to make some notes and stuff to talk about certain things we can talk about. So anyway, and we talked about that earlier as well. Okay, so Saffron is saying, I'm actually impressed Armin knows quite a bit. He swears so much you'd think he was partially ignorant. I heard somebody else said that. They said that because you swear a lot, people don't take your knowledge seriously.
Oh, fuck you.
But
fuck
I think
them.
that's such a no. It's 20.
Wait, but focus on the first part. Why are you focusing on the second part? He's saying, he said what? You got cut. He said he thinks I know a lot? Thank you.
He said, I'm actually impressed Armin knows quite a bit. He swears so much you'd think he was partially ignorant.
That's a full comment. Yeah, but...
And then next he said, I once dated a cute girl named Ali. So, there you go.
The thing is that I think the people that have a problem with swearing is part of the purity thing that comes with religion. So I don't like words are words. There's nothing sacred about them. Just like there's no sacred, words that are supposed to be revered. There's no words that you're supposed to not, that makes it discuss. If you find these words too vulgar, it's your ears that are too sensitive, right? You need to fix something. This is this is the kind of purity that we don't need. This is the kind of purity that religion introduces into our society, and I will keep swearing to fight this kind of purity.
Yeah. So. Boulder Dennis is asking, I'm just going with the questions. Who taught Muhammad how to write? So this is actually...
He never learned how to write.
Yeah, this is a historical thing that Muhammad was illiterate. He apparently did not know how to write. So this is why the Quran was revealed. When he got the revelations, he would
Ali was his first writer.
Yeah, and then they would the people around him, his companions, would sort of memorize whatever the revelations were, and then later they were written down, and then they weren't compiled until long after his death, until the Caliphate of Uthman.
So at that time, writing was very rare, but memorizing poetry was very common. Which makes Quran not a miracle at all, because all Muhammad had to do, because people say the Quran is a miracle because Muhammad didn't know how to read and write. Yeah, but he never wrote it down, and he never read it. He just memorized the poetry, and he came and told Ali to write it down, and other people, mostly Ali, according to Shias, mostly Ali. So I don't know if this is true. But so given that he had to just memorize it, and memorizing poetry was so common, how does that make it a miracle? I have yet to get an answer to this from any Muslim. But the interesting Shias actually say Ali was so good at writing and reading and writing that they called them Abul Nahv. Right? Which means the father of grammar, apparently. Sarf or Naf together is Arabic for grammar. But anyways, but Muhammad actually, he was originally poor when he was a goat herder, but when he married Khadija was rich, so Muhammad became rich. So when he was raising Ali, he could afford a tutor for Ali to teach Ali how to read and write.
Yeah,
but go on.
So Daniel Yerk again is asking, why are there so many Sunnis that say they're descendants of Muhammad? So anybody who talks about descendants of Muhammad. So my name is Rizvi. I come from the Imam Raza, who is also a direct descendant of Muhammad, and we actually have a family tree that's written down historically that traces us back to Muhammad. I even did my 23andMe and apparently my ancestry. But here's the thing. Almost everybody in Europe, for instance, white, whatever your race is, you're probably a descendant of Muhammad because of the Moorish invasion of southern Europe. I would refer people to Richard Dawkins' book, The Ancestor's Tale. So the thing is, almost all of us are descendants of Genghis Khan. Many of us are descendants of Muhammad. You may not even know it. Queen Elizabeth actually has a documented ancestor.
Alleged. We don't even know if anyone...
Oh, no. It's actually... It's
no, we don't even know
Queen
who
Isabella.
real Muhammad was. Okay, so we don't Anyways, but I'm going to say alleged. But go on.
Right. Okay. Yeah, of course there's doubt. But the thing is that, okay, there's almost unanimous consensus that Muhammad existed, but supposing he didn't, and supposing he wasn't, then all of this is moot. But if the historical records are correct, then most people are descendants. So that's how. By the way,
we're going to have this. We're going to have a whole episodes later on about skepticism about everything Islam, like going out and looking for evidence for if any of this ever happens. We're going to have episodes. We're going to have actual episodes eventually on that. But Daniel was very clever. I think he caught a apparent contradiction. He says, because I said Muhammad never actually learned how to read and write, he said, but you were talking about a pen and paper at his deathbed, right? So that's very true. And I think the way that works is that, based on other stories I heard from Muhammad, is that he would get pen and paper and he would dictate and somebody would write down for him, right? That's how it works. And the way I know that, is that, like, one actually very interesting story is that when when Muhammad actually came to, he wrote a treaty with Mecca at the time when Mecca hadn't yet accepted Islam yet, a peace agreement or whatever you call it, right? So at that time, when Muhammad was still in power only in Medina, but haven't yet conquered Mecca yet, before it led to the full invasion, at first they had a peace agreement, and the people from Mecca, when they were the person that they sent to negotiate this peace agreement, Muhammad was telling Ali to, they were writing their part, and Ali was writing on behalf of Muhammad, and Ali signed Muhammad's name as Muhammad Rasulullah, which is Muhammad, the Prophet of God. And that other guy, which I forgot his name from the other side, says that that's not how I recognize you. We don't recognize you as a prophet of God, so you can't sign it as Muhammad Rasulullah. And Muhammad tells Ali to cross that out and sign as Muhammad ibn Abdullah, which was the name of his father, Muhammad, the son of Abdullah. And Ali refuses. This is a direct command from Muhammad, which Ali says, I cannot do, because to do that, the part that he has to cross out has Allah's name in it. And Ali says that I cannot cross out the name of Allah, right? And Muhammad tells Ali to just give me the pen and show me where it says Rasulullah, and I will cross it out for you. And then you could write down Ibn Abdullah instead. Anyway. But anyways, that was an interesting story about that.
Okay. All right. Okay. We got to wrap this up. Okay. Now, just a couple more questions. Bin, that's his name, is asking, what are the hadiths for Shias which are not part of Sunni tradition? Virtually none of them. They reject all Sunni hadith.
No. There's...
Shias reject Bukhari. They reject... sorry, not Bukhari. It's Bukhari, Muslim. They reject almost all of them.
Are you... Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I never heard about these hadiths until...
There are commonalities. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
There's commonalities, yes.
That is in the Bukhari hadith that also appears in Shia.
Exactly. So there are some stuff in the sources that there's some hadiths in the books that Sunnis take seriously that you also find in the books
in
that
Shia, but overall their sources they reject each other's.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, should the Shia reject the Sunni sources? The Sunni don't always reject Shia sources. So that's a
they don't. I mean, they kind of reject it by not calling. They're saying they're not sahih. Like anything that they say they might be true, but you can't trust it if it's not sahih, if it's authentic, right?
So BTD Endgame. So this reminds me that we should have probably been more basic in the beginning. But he's saying, why are Shia so devout to Ali? The very word Shia,
because he's the essence of God.
The very word Shia.
This is the extreme version of this. Is the ultimate extreme version of being devout to Ali is the people that say that Ali is actually the essence of God. But go on.
So but he's saying why Shia actually is short for Shiatul Ali, which means followers of Ali. So Shia means followers. The very name means followers of Ali. So you'd expect them to be fairly devout. The Rational Guard is saying, was Muhammad a Jedi? It probably was, I think.
No, that's a reference to our Star Wars worlds, because I think Muhammad would be the Yoda and Ali would be like a Jedi. That's go on. We could keep making these comparisons. It would be fun, actually.
Harshit is asking, how come Iran became a Shia majority?
That would be the third. Would that be the third episode?
Third episode.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and I think that is mainly it. Rational is okay. It seems that there are more splinter groups that come from Shiism than Sunnism. Is that correct? Ahmadiyya, Alavi, Ismaili. No, that's not correct. Actually, Ahmadiyya is more derived from Sunnism. Alavi, Ismaili are derived from Shia. There are also Deobandi, there's Barelvi, there's all these other ones in Sunnism. There are actually a lot more factions in Sunnism than there are in Shiism.
No, not technically. There's more groups, but they have more agreements with each other.
No, we're not talking about the agreements. We're talking about how many factions there are. So there are actually more subsects in Sunnis. Because Sunnis are so much bigger.
Are you? You're not considering the 4 schools of thought in Sunni Islam as subsects, are you? Because they would not.
No,
okay.
not those. I'm talking about everything. Salafis to
right.
Diyabag to Paralvis to all that. Okay, so anyway, moving on. I'm looking for tags and
Beach is saying my brain. Thank you, Ali and Armin and everyone. Cheers to all. My brain feels so full right now. Thank you, Beach.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I think that's good.
Matt Rose is saying you need to have an ex-Sunni on your show. You're somehow getting Sunni studies wrong.
No, we're not. We have had so many discussions with Sunnis.
Well, not only discussions. Actually, when I studied Islam in school, when I went to school, we had to do Islamic studies.
What are we getting wrong? Point one thing that we got wrong.
Yeah, we have to choose. We had to choose between whether we're going to do the Sunni version, Shia version. I was supposed to do the Shia version because I'm Shia, but because all of the good teachers were in Sunni and most of the kids were doing Sunni, and I could borrow their notes and stuff, I decided to do my exams in the Sunni thing. So I actually know more about that than I do about the Shia.
Yeah, but they keep pointing out to the part that I said he asked for paper. He did. I mean, that is in the biography that he asked for paper. Not that he was going to write on it, but go on.
Okay,
people are going to be nitpicky about things.
All right, so now I got to go, so I'm just going to do one more question. Some of these are repeated. So, yeah, we talked about Uthman's caliphate and how that was a failure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
People are saying, okay, let's just go. That's good. That's good. We asked everything that we were tagged in.
So the Ashura event, I think
Karen is saying thanks, Armin and Ali. Thank you. Ahmed is saying take care, guys. Thank you, guys, for all your information. By the way, I'm pretty sure, obviously, we're going to not get everything right. So once this video is not live anymore, everything that you want to correct us on or educate us on,
add it in the comments.
Add it in the comments. Be nice, okay? We're always learning, and we're happy to learn from you as well. Don't be a dick about it. But let us know if there's anything that you thought we should have added that we didn't, anything that we think we got wrong. Just leave it in the comment section.
What do you think we should talk about the next time? Because we're going to do 3 parts of this.
Yeah, there's going to be 3 parts. So let us know if any corrections that you want to add us to the list. Not right now. Once the live is out, add it to the comment section so that we could read it.
Right, and if you guys think that this was, let us know if you thought we didn't focus on the basics as much, if we got into too much detail, too granular. That's also a good thing for us.
By the way, we have had also a lot of weren't the 2 Abdullahs that we had ex-Sunnis?
No. They were.
Yeah.
They were.
So
and Abdullah Sabir is actually really interesting because he was Ismaili Shia and then he became Sunni and then now he's an ex-Muslim. So.
We even had an ex-Sunni Muslim that became a Hindu. So we have had ex-Sunnis on this show a lot. We have a lot of, and we have
Harris Sultan.
Harris Sultan. And not only we have had ex-Sunnis on this show a lot, we have had Sunnis on this show a lot. Go on.
Actually, that we had, So we've had all kinds of people, but it's interesting that a lot of the really prominent ex-Muslim voices, they too, was it Sarah Haythers from a Shia background, both of us.
Because Shiism, this is what I'm going to say later. The reason why Iran became Shia is because Shia was a symbol of opposition, and Iran used it as an opposition. So it's very interesting that a lot of the people in the ex-Muslim movement used to be Shia, given that Shiism was also the spirit of opposition, always in the opposition against mainstream. But okay, so Mars is saying, Mike is saying, thanks guys, live long and prosper. Mars is saying, informative episode. Thanks, Ali and Armin. Daniel saying, thank you guys. I learned a lot, but I am still confused. It was more organized than our other episode. We actually did put some structure to this.
We stuck to chronology.
Chronology, at least, yes. Another good book to read is about more details on these stories. A book is called After the Prophet. So so the 2 books combination, this whole drama during Muhammad's lifetime, the book would be Muhammad's his life based on the earliest sources. For the drama during his life, and for the drama after his life, a good, easy book to read is called After the Prophet. Forgot who wrote that, but it was very fun read. If you want to be less confused about it. The Rational Guard is saying Abdullah was Shia first, then Sunni. Well, he was Sunni at some point. Saffron Butter is saying, may Allah keep you safe from the Ummah. That's funny. I'm going to use that. Mars saying, it's religion. It's not supposed to make sense. Well, I mean, it does have, it has some internal structure to it, even though it doesn't make sense from the outside because it's not real, but it's organized nonsense rather than chaotic nonsense. That's what I tell people. Anyways, let's end it at that.
So that's good.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna head. I gotta go, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. This was a blast. It was a lot of fun. And we're not talking not the Allahu Akbar kind of blast.
Okay.
And we will see you next time. Lots of really great stuff. This is right now we're recording this as the end of February, but lots of really, really great stuff already cooking for March and April. So. Stay tuned and go to iTunes. Give us a rating.
Leave us a review on iTunes. That really helps. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And then, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget, subscribe right now. Okay.
Yeah, just click. It's right down there. Just go hit subscribe. You're good.
All right.
Okay, guys.
All right. Love you all.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.